Good morning. Welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. All right, I'm going to go through some things kind of quickly, but before I do, I'm going to again offer up. Well, actually, I'm going to run through a few of these so you can see the numbers, and then we'll put out the offer one more time. So let's take a look at the S&P and that 50-50 portfolio that I mentioned. So when you look at that, I'm not going to get into go through each year, but we had a bear market 2000 through 2002 where the market dropped about 44%, the S&P 500 index. During that same period, that 50-50 portfolio basically about broke even. So imagine that instead of losing almost $100,000 on a $250,000 investment, you maybe were down $1,000. That's a huge difference, okay? Then the bounce back, and it goes through till 2007. You're back up over that $250,000 investment if you're in the S&P. In the portfolio, much higher. Even with the drop, so in 08 when the market dropped, we saw that $250,000. All of a sudden, you're less than your original investment. Now you're in the market already for 9 years, and you have less than you started with in the S&P. And what did I say? The S&P outperforms, right, 90% of equity mutual funds. So imagine this was known as the lost decade, this period, because of how poorly the market did, and investors, of course, did even worse in that regard. All right, now, whereas with the balanced portfolio, it dropped about 20%, still had over almost 100,000 more than you originally started with. And then when you go to the very bottom, you see that 250 on the S&P would have grown to about 459,000, and on the balanced growth portfolio, 539. So again, a big difference, lower risk, higher return, exactly what we were looking for. There's a computer model for that, the balanced growth strategy. If you look at this next slide, what you see here is it's just showing this computer model is saying that we've created a portfolio that we want to stay within that standard deviation, so we're not adding risk while we're attaining that desired rate of return. The computer modeling on the portfolios show, in fact, that they do attain that goal. All right, now some hedging strategies. So the next slide talks about Dr. Schiller, who also is a Nobel Prize winner, and he teamed up with Barclays, and on the next slide he determined, basically his approach is not using asset allocation, or asset categories rather, but is using asset allocation using market sectors, the 10 market sectors like financials and the like. So one of the things that we find with so when we're talking about market sectors, this would be things like consumer staples, finance, health care. So it just slices the market up a little differently. He does back testing of the last 12 months to see which sectors have done the best, and through that process he's looking for the lowest volatility, the best return. He determines the best 4 market sectors, and that becomes the portfolio for that month. This is a hedging strategy that can be utilized, and it's done within an indexed annuity. All right, so next slide. What does this accomplish? Basically, the goal is to smooth out those returns, smooth out volatility while giving us a return, okay, that the return we're seeking. So if we can get into something safe where we've got our principals guaranteed, now watch again, some of these types of index annuities, some of them have fees, some do not. So that's why I'm saying this isn't something, I'm not giving a blanket statement that all index annuities are good. You need to shop. Some of them have caps. They have low participation rates. There's a lot of confusing language potentially in those, so it's very important to understand which ones work. There are about 3 different companies right now, 3 maybe 4, that have some very good products out there. And I would say right now for my clients, when I'm looking at them, I've got it narrowed down to maybe about 4 or 5 that we utilize. This is out of 1,000 different products, so it shows how important it is to do the research to understand. If you take a look at the next slide, you see how again it's done over this period. This was going from 2003, after that bear market I mentioned earlier, and the compounded return compared to the S&P, and we can see that it did quite well. The next one is the Merrill Lynch RPM index. This is another new index utilizing, again, another way to try to use momentum. All right, and it's now if we look at the next slide, it'll show how we're using domestic equities, international equities, emerging market equities, gold, real estate, and bonds. This is the asset allocation mix that this particular company is using to do it with this RPM index. And again, the goal is, as we see, reduce risk, use momentum, and get that negative correlation that we're looking for. And then on the next, we can see again Actually, that one we're going to skip. Now, if you get into income riders, and I'll talk about that in another show because that's a show in and of itself. So let's go past that to the performance. Again, it's designed to provide consistent returns through different market cycles. So you can see the S&P in this situation, and going back to '02, with an average return of 4.3 on the S&P and 6% on that index. Now, again, when we're looking at that, we'll go ahead and take the slides down for a minute. When we're looking at these things, understand that's not a guarantee that that's what you're going to receive. It's showing how it's done over certain market conditions. Our goal is to try to blend together and putting together a portfolio and putting together your plan for your retirement to get that return you need to attain your goals, right? Maintain your standard of living, your quality of life, be able to do the things you want to do throughout your life, especially when you get to those times. If you want to retire and you want to be able to enjoy life, then you've got to have a plan to help you get there, right? And make sure that when you're making the decisions about how much to save or how much to spend, that you understand exactly what you've got in there to do that, okay? That's where a personalized plan comes in. So again, for the first 10 callers to my office this morning, 615-376-5325, I'll do up a personalized plan for you. We'll determine what your needed rate of return is to attain your goals based on what you have for income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, right? And show you your financial future based on what you're currently doing, show you what kind of return that you're getting on your investments and what kind of return you can expect to get based on the type of holdings. The world is changing, so one of the things, bond funds that did very well over the last 10 years, over the next 10 years there's going to be a lot of pressure on them. So if you call my office again, 615-376-5325, Debbie and Tess actually are standing by. They'll take your calls. They'll get information to you, a checklist of things to bring to your appointment, all right, so that you can get the most out of the appointment. I want to give you a comprehensive plan, right? So all you have to do is bring in this little checklist. I'll do the rest of the work for you and with you to help you determine and show you different strategies that you can implement, show you how to do asset allocation within your 401k, talk to you about Social Security, Medicare, all these things. So whether you're saving up for retirement, whether you're already retired, whichever it is, or very near to retirement, this is all information that's going to make it so much better for you and give you some peace of mind. You will have a plan that will work. I promise you. And for everyone that comes in, I'll also give you a copy of my book, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom in Retirement. Okay? So when you come in, that I'll present to you, and I'll go through some of the things in there and how it correlates to what we're going to be doing with you in the office as well in developing your plan. All right, so we're going to go to the J.P. Morgan Mosaic. Now, this one is a different approach. All right, here again, it's using asset allocation. So it's taking 15 different asset categories in U.S., Europe, and Asia. So we'll go ahead and throw that slide up so everyone can see it. So this is the benefit of a broadly diversified approach. That's the one. All right, so now here, what we're doing is asset allocation again, all right? So we're looking at stocks and bonds, different asset categories and asset classes. And when we talk about asset categories and classes, we're talking about not only international and domestic, but things like large companies and small companies blended together give us a better overall return with less risk. And again, large and small companies on both domestic and international, growth and value is another part. This goes to that 3-factor model we talked about earlier, developed by Dr. Fama. All right, on the next one now, this is where it changes up. And this is kind of interesting. These new strategies, where we're called momentum strategies, have some great ways. Here's the concept. I'm talking to you about active versus passive management. Active management, they're using, like, they think they have a crystal ball and they're able to pick out which companies are going to do better, and they buy those companies and they say, okay, these are going to do better in the future. If it doesn't work out, then of course they're always buying and trading, selling. So what we're looking at here, on the other hand, is momentum. So we look at the 15 best asset categories, and out of those 15 asset categories, we're going to determine which of the top 9 performing. So we're going to look over the last 6 months. This is the way this works in this particular. They have an algorithm, a computer program that does all this for them, of course. So they look at the 15. They say, of the 15, which are the best 9? All right, over the last 6 months. And then we're going to take those 9 and we're going to divide that, which of the 9 did the best. We're going to put more money in that one, and then the next best and the next best. And so that's how we divide up the money as well. And that becomes your portfolio, let's say, for January. At the end of January, we start at the end of January and go back 6 months, and we do this same process. And that becomes the portfolio for February. And of course, at the end of February, back 6 months from that. So we're seeing the momentum of how that works, all right? Now, we'll take down this, well, let's go ahead to the next slide then. And you can see here, it's showing that in this is going back to 2000, so this is taken in, actually 1999. So it's taken into consideration both of the bear markets of the last, from 2000, of this century, if you will, from 2000 on. And the average return at about 5% on that index versus about 4% on the S&P. All right, this is, again, the next slide, seeking consistent returns in uncertain times. This, let me show you, this is the hedging part that to me is very exciting when I look at how this is performed. So the next slide is seeking consistent returns in uncertain times. This is our last slide, I believe. All right, so you can see that bear market in the highlighted blue section. In the bear market, when the S&P dropped 10% in 2000, this made 5% on this index. When the S&P dropped 13, it made almost 5 again. When it dropped 23, it made 7. So this is a strategy that so far can, and even in 08, when the market dropped 38%, this index made 5. So here's a strategy that can be maybe implemented with your portfolio, right, to help reduce the volatility and get an even better return. Okay, so we've got some more to share with you. Okay, I've given you now some of the things to look for to help you save for your retirement. We're going to talk more now about some ways to protect yourself at the same time. So join me here. I'll be right back on the Retirement Report.